I'm not a home run hitter. I don't play conventional sports. Not really good at baseball. But I could hit home runs if you corked the bat and you brought the infield in, 150 feet and pitched it right down the center. If you manipulate your environment, you can do things. And it's like a carburetor. Carburetor is a gas-oxygen mixture to get the float to sit right and for the flow to be perfect. And then you get that perfect idle, then you're going to run right. And so you got to tinker with it until you get that perfect.
I love that, man. And of course, I like the car analogy. That's really good. So, well, I guess what I wanted to pull out of that is for the entrepreneurs that are listening to this, they're looking for these little tidbits, these gold nuggets.
Where other people are running from things, run to them.
In today's ultra-competitive business world, being a successful entrepreneur or business owner can be very challenging. Fortunately, contemporary times have blessed us with resources for tackling those challenges and getting us to success more quickly than we could have imagined. Welcome to The Root of All Success with the Real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs grow incredible companies. This podcast looks at the 5 keys to unlocking success as an entrepreneur. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason's mission is to use his gifts of teaching and leadership to help others get the results they want out of life. Join Jason every week and learn the keys to grow a truly successful business.
Well, welcome back to the show. I am the Real Jason Duncan. Thank you for tuning in again on this podcast, The Root of All Success, where I interview some super successful entrepreneurs on how they got to become so successful. And I have this theory that there are these 5 keys that every entrepreneur uses to unlock their success. And with their passion, right place, right time, knowing the right people, preparation, and plan. And every guest on every show, I kind of go through those 5 things, talk with them about those 5 things, and find out how they became successful so that you can use those same keys, because those keys unlock success for everybody. So that's why we do this show. And thank you for being here. If you're listening on a podcast player, thank you for listening. Please make sure you subscribe and hit the review button and leave us a 5-star review. And if you don't like what you hear enough to give it 5 stars, why don't you reach out to me and let me know what I can do to make it better, because we want to deliver great content for you. And if you don't already watch this on YouTube, you definitely want to watch this show on YouTube, especially this episode, because we are recording at a different location today. We're recording at Flight Solutions hangar at Music City Executive Airport in Gallatin, Tennessee, owned by Kevin McCutcheon, who was a former guest on my show. And we're sitting in one of his hangars here at the airport, and over my shoulder is one of his helicopters, and over my guest shoulder, which you'll see in just a moment, is one of his airplanes. And you want to take a look at this on YouTube. It's very cool setting here. We normally record these at the Standard downtown, but today we're recording them at Flight Solutions. So if you are in need of private aviation, whether you want to buy or sell any aircraft, if you're looking for private charters and you're tired of flying commercial and you want to get out of that nonsense and you think, hey, my life and business is so important, I cannot deal with the time stress and the rancor that you have to deal with flying on commercial flights, then you need to reach out to Flight Solutions. They're based in Nashville, but have hangars and offices all throughout the country and can get you anywhere you want to go. If you need to buy an airplane, they can find it. If you want to buy a helicopter, they can find it. If you need to finance it, they provide that. And if you need your aircraft maintained, they do a full service maintenance program for all of their owners. So if you're interested in looking up Flight Solutions, you want to talk to them, call them at 615-452-5001. That's 615-452-5001. Or you can send an email directly to them at info@flightsolution.com. That's info@flightsolution.com. And I would appreciate it if you'd say, hey, I heard about you on The Root of All Success with the Real Jason Duncan. So that's where we're filming today. That's where we're recording. Thank you for being here. So if you're interested in knowing if you have what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur, and you're asking yourself, how do I know if I'm going to succeed? One of the things that I offer is a free success assessment. You can go to therealjasonduncan.com/success and take a free success assessment at 17 questions that'll give you an indication of your probability of success as an entrepreneur. 17 questions, you'll get an immediate email back with a report personalized for you on the answers, based on the answers that you gave, and that's completely free, my gift to you. So go to therealjasonduncan.com/success for that. All right, enough with all the promos. Let's get on with the show. So my guest today, I'm lucky enough to have been introduced to him through another friend of our mutual friend of ours, and come to find out, we're both members at the Standard in Nashville, where we normally film these episodes. And come to find out, he lives in kind of the same area that I do too. So it was all kind of a happy accident that we found each other. But he grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and comes from a long line of entrepreneurs. Both his grandfathers and his step-grandfather all had some sort of businesses on their own, pharmacies or VHS tape businesses and other things. So he understands it kind of in his blood what entrepreneurialism is. And then he grew up, started his own kind of lawn mowing landscaping company as a kid, reffed inline hockey, lined baseball fields. He's done a little bit of everything. Went to DePaul University, was involved in wrestling and boxing, and ended up working for the housing authority there. And that kind of took him in a different direction, which we'll talk about today on his entrepreneurial journey. And then he started another company called Channel Partnerships, which is a very interesting story. When we first met, he sat down and told me this, and I'm going to ask him to tell more of that story. And then he became a partner in another big company called Rosemar USA, which he's going to tell us a little bit about, that manufactures cleaning products. And I don't even want to attempt to explain that. He will do a much better job as we get to him today. He's married to a lady named Stephanie. They have a beautiful little son named Callum, and a huge dog, a Rhodesian Rhodesian Ridgeback, like a lion hunter dog. They're like 120-pound dogs, and a cat. And I think his wife put that in there. But I want to welcome to the show now a new friend of mine, Eric Albian. Thank you, Eric, for being on the show today, man.
Thank you, Jason. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's interesting that we live so close to each other, and we're members of the Standard, the way we kind of knew each other. And then, hey, you live close, and I'm going to be doing the show at the hangar. Why don't you come out and do it out here? So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Awesome location. Very cool. Not normally sitting in front of private jets. So very, very cool. And like I said, a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great. I'm glad you're here. And this show, The Root of All Success, is dedicated to kind of the root of success and how you as an entrepreneur started, because you've become a pretty successful guy, and your reputation precedes you. So talk to us about how you got your start in life as an entrepreneur.
Sure. So, you kind of touched on jobs at a young age. I think everyone gets into work. We're all part of capitalism here in the U.S. So you get into work because you want to buy something, you want something. And the things that excited me when I was younger were things that went fast. Go-karts, go-peds, mini bikes. And so there was an opportunity. I was about 10 years old in fourth grade for a paper route. The kid across the street had it and no longer could do it. It was only about 5 streets. I mean, maybe at most a couple hundred houses. So not a huge thing, but as a 10-year-old, making $100, $150 a month, that was a lot of money. And so I was able to save up then and buy all my things that went fast. I lived in, a cookie-cutter suburb, and you're not supposed to be driving these things on the street. And so the only way that I could get them is if I went out and worked and got the money to start that. And that was kind of my first foray, I would say, into entrepreneurial behavior, looking for ways to, start myself off. And, I have a few, kind of a thought process that everyone is really their own business. And so, to me, that was what started me, because this was my first foray into business, and that's what's kind of led me to here.
So 10 years old, take over a paper route, but then you ended up doing some landscaping. I guess
Sure.
It's like all kids mow the grass at some point. So, but you actually started a whole landscaping company.
Yeah, so that was later on. That was in college, okay? And so in college, I had jobs in call centers, raising money from people that just graduated from a private Catholic school in the city of Chicago, which very expensive tuition. And no one really wanted to call on certain schools. The school that no one wanted to talk to was the School of Law, because there are people that just graduated with a law degree, and they have huge student debt. And what I thought is okay, well, maybe there's a way to go after the the highest fruit because it's going to have, the biggest return. And so what I was able to do is look for people that, graduated a long time ago. So their student debt is pretty far from them. A lot of people that are lawyers, tend to be successful. And so instead of calling and doing what they told me to do, which was follow a script, ask for 3 amounts of money, and at the end of the conversation, if you didn't get anything, you hung up and you dialed again. Instead, I decided to ask them about their experience at DePaul, tell them, I was thinking about law school, get them excited about what their passion was, get them back to the place that they were. And by the end of the conversation, them telling me their success story, very difficult for them to say no, that they don't have anything after they just told me about everything that they had accomplished, to give something to the school. And so that's how I cut my teeth on the phones. And, and I would say it was probably my first job where, fear of rejection really came into play. Most people get on a phone, they don't know what to say, you hang up before you even get anything out, and, you're behind a phone, so it's easy to do that over and over again. This was something that kind of taught me to, slow down a little bit, have a conversation, and be strategic with, what I was trying to do, not just, immediately come out and say, hey, can you sign me over some money? The landscape company was a little bit different. So after the call center, I needed something that paid a little bit better. That wasn't, it was a real job, I would say, something that was going to give me 25, 30 hours a week, pay down some of my student loans, have a job. And so through connection of my mother's, I got a job at DuPage Housing Authority. At the time, the largest housing project in the city was shutting down, Caprini Green. And so they were relocating low-income families to the suburbs. And so these were all Section 8 houses, not the nicest places in town. We did the landscape and maintenance, the snow removal landscape. And, as this DuPage Housing Authority was able to grow, so were the labor requirements. They came to me, I was about 19, 20 years old at the time. Hey, Eric, should we, hire on more people, or should we contract this out? And, I just, being young and just asking questions, said, well, what if I contracted it to myself? Well, as long as you had a truck and you had equipment and you had your own business, I don't see what the problem would be. And so the next thing I did was get on the phone, start calling, finding about how I could get a loan. No one was going to give me a business loan. I was too young. I had no history. At this time, you could still get a student loan for anything. And so I took out a $35,000 student loan, bought a truck, bought all my equipment, contracted it to myself, had the contracts in hand, was able then to go back and pay off, all those student loans, and had my first business. And it was mainly college and high school kids, cutting lawns and moving snow, and then putting people that didn't want to live in apartments, they were buying foreclosed houses. This is around the housing crash too, so 2008, I'm sorry. And so the housing market had crashed, and so they were doing these kind of rent-to-own programs. These people didn't make any money, so it was very difficult for them to ever own this property. But we wanted to renovate it and make it look nice, so I'd come in, pull out the bushes, make any changes to make the house as presentable as possible. And that was really where the company started. And what I found in that, and I'll get into kind of the snow removal part because it's a hustle, especially in Chicago. You get a lot of snow. And so, what we did is we would find people to come in, do paver stone patios, do, walkways. I wasn't doing this, and this is the same thing you find with general contractors, subcontractors. Go find 3 subcontractors, sub it out, and you take the guy in the middle and you make the difference between the guy in the middle and the highest price. And, and that became my business model. Was not the cheapest, was not the best. There were misplaced funds. Everything in Chicago tends to be corrupt. And so as those funds were misplaced and people got pushed out of jobs, I knew that I wasn't the best. I wasn't the cheapest. My contracts would eventually go up for bid. Sold the company, sold the equipment, ended up north on everything. And that was my first foray into business, and the first time I made a deal with myself to say that the next business that I started would be something that I was passionate about and wanted to do, and not something that was born just out of opportunity.
So you were working for the housing authority as one of the laborers, right?
Yeah, but kind of the supervisor, right? So I was the one, setting the jobs up, making sure that people, cut the lawns, move the snow, did any maintenance or upkeep.
And then an opportunity presented itself where they needed to get an outside contracting firm. And you're like, hey, I'll do that. So you volunteered, hey, I can make this happen. And you, I guess I missed that in the first time you told me the story, or I forgot about it. But that is so clever and ingenious to say, I need 30 grand, so to speak, or whatever the number was. I need 30 grand to buy equipment, trucks, and get people going. But no bank will loan me money on a business. But the school loan people will give me.
Back then, they would give you just put your name on a piece of paper and you had a student loan. And obviously, people got themselves in trouble with that. And I paid that back immediately. I know it's not really kosher what I did. I'm not telling people to go and take out loans or anything like that. But
being creative,
yes,
it illustrates your creativity, which if we look at the 5 P's of success, plan is the last P that I teach and I talk about with entrepreneurs like you. And that plan, what I mean is, do you have the strategy to obtain and deploy the resources necessary to achieve your mission? Well, what are you attempting to do? For your mission and vision was, I want to take these contracts from the housing authority. I want to be the guy making this money. I need 30 grand. How am I going to get it? Well, my plan, again, not necessarily a recommended plan, but your plan was creative and said, I'm going to go get the money wherever I can get it.
Correct. And you'll see that plan kind of root itself through my other endeavors too. Raising capital for channel partnerships. Channel partnerships, my first, what I would consider real company that I was, passionate about and empowered about, to raise capital to take on the projects that I needed. I had to be creative with that too.
Let's talk about channel partnerships, because I really like that story because I think it's unique in what you do. So give us, first of all, before you tell how you started it, like, what does it do? What does channel partnerships do?
Right, so it's a cost mitigation and vendor procurement company. And so let me back up because it'll make a lot more sense. So after landscaping, after I sold Advanced Landscape, I then went on to work for a friend's family company. It was a packaging company, about $200 million company. So middle tier company, located outside of Chicago, but had another distribution center in Memphis. And so, there I worked with a couple of people whose kids worked at the company. No one was going to give me accounts. My friend had come to me and said, hey, I know you would be really good at this because you're always talking me into things I don't want to do. So you'd be a good salesman.
That goes back to your phone skills.
Right. And so, packaging is interesting because everything comes in some sort of package. So in distribution is probably the oldest profession that exists. Buying or obtaining a mass of things to then distribute, the lower allotments of things. And there's money to be made in that. If you follow distribution paths, and you'll see that kind of pop up in my story here, distribution is really what I do. And so, I worked for this packaging company, opened the most accounts, more accounts than all the sales reps, combined. And my strategy wasn't going after the big guys, it was going after the smallest customers, people that no one wanted because activity is something. And so what people don't realize in sales is sometimes you're not getting the results because the environment is manipulated against you. Maybe you're just not in the right environment, but to show that you belong in the right environment, you have to show activity. And so I went out and I opened these. I went and, again, I make these assumptions in life, and I attribute this to my success. To me, it's harder to capture a new customer, someone that doesn't know who you are or why they want to do business with you, than it is to, go back and get and rekindle something that, at least they already know who you are, a company that already knows, a customer that already knows who you are. And so I asked for all of the accounts that the company had lost in the last 5 years. Now, I couldn't get every single one of them, but they would give me the oldest ones first, and I'd work on that. And, essentially my sales pitch was it wasn't the company, it was just that you weren't working with the right person. I wasn't there to help service your account. And so because of that, it's not that you had a bad relationship with the company, you had a bad relationship with your sales rep. Let me fix that. And, that's kind of the assumption that I made, is that it would be easier to get this. I opened more accounts, and because of that, they offered me a new territory. They offered me to go to Nashville. We had a satellite facility there, and we had a distribution center in Memphis. And because of that, I moved to Nashville, gave me a much better position, gave me more opportunity. This is an expanding market.
All right, so for those that are listening to this and watching this, they'll probably have heard the interruption. We had a jet come by. And when you film at an airport in a hangar, that is a risk you take. But I'm going to go back. So if any of this is a repetitive, listeners will forgive us that this is repetitive. We're going back and asking that question. So Eric, Channel Partnerships is a really interesting company. And so you had the landscape company, you sold the company, and then you went to work for some other people. But Channel Partnerships came, like, tell us, just give us 60 seconds or 90 seconds on what it is, and we'll talk about how it got built out.
Sure. So Channel Partnerships is a vendor procurement and cost mitigation firm. And so essentially, if you think about a concept of like a headhunter or recruiter, you have the employer and the potential employee. The recruiter is placing the potential employee with the employer. And so essentially that's what Channel Partnerships does. It cuts out, we're qualifying people, knowing their needs, in matching them with manufacturers, mainly packaging manufacturers that can produce at the level that they procure. And so with all distribution, the main rule is quantity dictates price. So, if you can combine purchasing across and maximize purchasing, you can find savings.
Yeah, so Channel Partnerships, that's what it does. So how did you start that? That's a very unique concept, and how did you start it?
Right, so I worked in packaging distribution. A friend of mine's family owned a packaging company. Packaging can be anything from corrugated boxes to tape to stretch film, all things that I've sold in the past and still have hands in. But essentially, knowing it was a family company, wasn't going to get all the accounts handed to me. Some of the other sales reps called it the Lucky Sperm Club, as two of the sons of the owners worked for the company, and they just happened to get all the big accounts would land on their desk. And so, I knew I wasn't going to get the big fish. Chicago is, if not the most competitive packaging market, it's number 2. So everyone's selling the same thing. Everyone's knocking on doors. So I figured I'd go after, opening the most accounts. And so I opened more accounts than all the other sales reps. That led me to an opportunity in Nashville, probably the best decision I ever made in my life. And so when I came down to Nashville, I landed a big account right away. They brought me down to Martin, Tennessee, and I was handling MTD. They make Toro, Craftsman, Cub Cadet lawnmowers. And so lots of packaging, a lot of stuff being shipped actually to Germany, and was working on some volatile corrosive inhibitors, which essentially are desiccants. They keep rust from happening. And so, after I landed this account, Martin is not close to Nashville. We decided that with this account, we could hire new sales reps in Jackson, Tennessee that would manage this, and it would be better. I handed this book of business over, and they started me in a new, progression. Still young, 27 at this point, 26, and this was for sourcing, global sourcing. And so the idea is there were emerging packaging markets, China, Turkey, Brazil, Mexico, India, that had products that could compete with U.S. manufacturers or other importers, but the cost was lower and they had zero market share. And so what we did is we brought these companies to market in the U.S., a big one being the Val Group. They're a flexible film company based out of Italy and Spain, who have operations in Brazil. We sold enough stretch film for them to be able to buy Dow Chemical's old facility in Ohio and start manufacturing domestically in the U.S. and bring Val Group to the United States. We did this with tape manufacturers. So essentially what I was doing was working with, emerging markets and bringing these markets. In this, what we saw, and most of my competitors were now customers. So as I was a packaging distributor, well, the packaging distributors buy from the manufacturers, and essentially in this, we were the pseudo manufacturers reps for these brands. And so with that, I built up a big distributor network, about 200 different packaging companies in the Southeast. Eventually, the company came back to me and said, hey, this is great. We want to point you in another direction. I said, I didn't want to go in this direction. They said, we're not asking, we're telling. And that's when I knew that my book of business wasn't my book of business. It was their book of business that they allowed me to manage. And so that's what started to Channel Partnerships. I constantly found myself asking the question, we're only selling this because it makes us a lot of money, right? And the answer was resoundingly yes. So people didn't care what they were selling. They didn't care about solving people's problems as much as they solved about making their nut and selling the thing. So I decided that, I was going to start to look for opportunities where how could I solve your packaging problems. And sometimes that happens, if we're talking about corrugated boxes. Well, corrugated boxes manufacturers spend a lot of money in engineers. Those engineers, when you send them a problem, they're going to solve your problem with corrugated. Doesn't mean that corrugated is the answer to the solution. It just means that that's what their designers are paid to do. And so I thought, well, I'll go and I'll find independent design firms. I'll design my own solutions. I know the packaging mediums and the different materials. I'll combine it to have solutions. I brought a great solution. My uncle was in white glove transport. His big account was HP. He was moving cloud-based servers from El Paso to Silicon Valley. And so a cloud-based server could not any bigger really than this table. So decent sized footprint, cost anywhere from $200,000 to $2 million, $200,000 to $2 million. And so the problem is you could ship it in a truckload, but when you're shipping one, it never showed up the way that it shipped out. And so what they did is they built big wooden containers. I decided that, hey, this is a great project for me to set in on for channel partnerships. So we looked at the wooden container. Wooden container did a really good job at protecting this server. Problem is you got a big fixed wooden container. You get it from El Paso or Houston up to Silicon Valley. Then what do? You got to ship it back empty? Not efficient. And so aha moment came to me when I was in the shower of all places. And I thought, well, what if I could make something, if they can get 3 turns out of a wooden container, what if I can make something that's not as strong as wood, but it's almost as strong as wood, so it's going to solve the damage issue, but it can collapse, and the return ratio is much higher than just one. And so what we did is we created return boxes, and they were essentially kits that went around the outside packaging of the server, so that way they could ship servers through general freight, save money in repositioning costs, all these found savings to accomplish the same goal, but just no one willing to put the work in to solve the problem. And that's really how Channel Partnership started, was taking all of these pieces, knowing the board, the 30,000 foot overview, and saying, well, this doesn't need to be here, this doesn't need to be here, this doesn't need to be here. Why don't you guys do business here?
Yeah.
And
so you're the channel that brings the two partners together, hence the name Channel Partnership. Now, I want to point out something that I think was very interesting in your story, is that you said when you were doing phone calling back at DePaul, you were doing fundraising, you were calling on the high fruit. I don't know if people picked up on that, but there's this low fruit mentality.
Right.
Hey, let's get the low fruit. It's easy to pick. Let's do that. So what you said is that you were calling the high fruit.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, I think maybe people miss that, because then you said when you started for that packaging company, it was you told me in your story, you asked for the crap accounts, the ones that had been canceled, the ones that they had lost in the last 5 years, and that's where. So you have an experience as an entrepreneur. Your preparation was that you called on high fruit, high paying, and you also called on the ones nobody wanted. Did you ever thought about that you did it on both ends?
Yeah,
of the spectrum?
so I have a way of looking at things inversely, and so you're saying the low fruit on the packaging. If you do something wrong, right? If you make a mistake, is it always easy to go to and apologize immediately? The answer is no, it's not. So asking for forgiveness for doing something wrong is difficult. So the assumption is most people don't do that. First thing I said was, I'm so sorry you had a bad experience with us. Let me make this experience right. And so to me, that's not a low fruit, it's actually a high fruit, because to recapture something that had bad last meeting, bad meeting, and to turn it back around. But the other part of what, I would say about the calling on the law students, I was manipulating my environment. And so I did this in another job too. I worked for a moving and storage and logistics company. And so we'd move furniture, office furniture, we'd move houses. And so when the lead list would come out, you get to pick your own leads. Well, no one was thinking in the way that I was thinking. If people estimated their weight to be the highest, the likelihood is that they have the biggest ones. So I could go and call 20 accounts where other people call 100, knowing that they have a ton of weight, knowing that the job is going to be big. And so all of a sudden I become 30% of the sales because I'm only, I've manipulated the rules to net the results that I want. If I'm going to close on 20% of my calls, I might as well close on 20% of only home runs.
Yeah.
It's like if you, I'm not a home run hitter. I don't play conventional sports. Not really good at baseball. But I could hit home runs if you corked the bat and you brought the infield in, 150 feet and pitched it right down the center. If you manipulate your environment, you can do things. And so it's about taking the pieces and or told you I liked engines and things that go. It's like a carburetor. Carburetor is a gas-oxygen mixture to get the float to sit right and for the flow to be perfect. And then you get that perfect idle, then you're going to run right. And so you got to tinker with it until you get that perfect.
I love that, man. And of course, I like the car analogy. That's really good. So, I guess what I wanted to pull out of that is for the entrepreneurs that are listening to this, they're looking for these little tidbits, these gold nuggets. Is that what you just manipulating your environments? Great.
Manipulating your environment's one, and the other one that I would say is where other people are running from things, run to them. There is a problem there that needs a solution, and when things are really bad, and I'll get to this later with Rosemar, the founder of Rosemar in Mexico in the 80s, Humberto Martinez, has a saying, it's where there's shit, there's money.
Yeah.
And so, and the meaning for that is we're in health and hygiene and sanitation. Where there's literal shit, there is money for us because we clean and disinfect.
That's so good, man. And I'm glad you told the story because I love that contrary opinion. And I had another guest on the show recently who talked about how entrepreneurs are unreasonable people. They're not looking for the reasonable way to do things. Or running towards a problem when everybody else is running from it is an unreasonable thing to do. But as entrepreneurs, that's what we do. So let me go back to channel partnerships. So channel partnerships. When you did this, you set this up based on all of the knowledge and the preparation that you'd had in the packaging industry and realizes that the two people that needed to talk to each other weren't talking to each other.
Right.
And that's how you created it. And you created a really successful company out of that, right?
Correct. Yeah, and it's not so much that the people that needed to talk to each other weren't talking. It was the people in between that were trying to make money that were keeping them from talking. The solution was never being delivered. The missile never had a missile guidance system. And so instead of getting in the way, and Channel Partnerships has a very good opportunity for entrepreneurs. If you go to channelpartnerships.com, you'll see it. It's called an engagement partner. I run a lot of BNI groups, and I got a lot of business out of BNI because I was different. Everyone else was real estate or finance or securities or whatever, what have you, but no one was packaging. No one was manufacturing, fulfillment, consulting. And so what I found is everyone wanted to get in on this. Oh, Eric, I got this great thing for you. Just teach me about it. And I was like, no, not teach you. Make the introduction, then we'll go in, we'll bring the right people in, we'll solve the problem. And then you make mailbox money, and your true role is to go out and find me more of these and more of them. And that became our sales and marketing strategy. And that's what led me to really have, so I talked about the first project that Channel Partnerships had. The first real success was with the foam fabricating facility based here operations here in Nashville, but had operations in Alabama and Indiana. And I walked in, and I'd known this company from one of my distributors in the past. And I said, hey, I know what you guys do here. I'd really like an opportunity. Can I do a walkthrough? And they said, we have too many people calling on us about packaging. We're not interested. We don't need anything. And I said, okay, I'm going to come back. And so persistency is another big thing for me. Went back in and I said, well, listen, do you have a problem that just no one else is willing to solve? And Ace, who actually works for me now, who was the operations manager at the time of this foam fabricating facility, said, yeah, I've got this patented box. And all the box guys say that for whatever reason, it won't line up. And what he means by that is you're taking a two-dimensional folding carton and you're turning it into three-dimension. And when you do that, there's a glue joint normally that holds the box together to allow it to make a three-dimensional shape. And so what we found is that the glue joint was so small and the pieces hanging off were so large that it could never effectively square the box. And so it was a bad design in the initial design. Now, he couldn't redesign it because the patents were specific to the way the box was. And so I went back to the corrugated engineers that I work with, 4 or 5 different firms and a couple different engineers. Now, I'm not doing everything myself. I'm leveraging infrastructure that already exists. People that know, I just know that there's a problem and I know where to go to get the answer to the problem. And then I take all those solutions and present them to the customer. And so the idea here is you can't close a box without a glue joint. And I said, you can't close a box without a glue joint. That's not true. You can use this, you can use this. So then I started coming up with ways to do that. So I took something that was a 3-dimensional item and I turned it back into a 2-dimensional item with a key lock. What people don't know when you're making a box, it's like cutting out cookies, right? So you have the liners. The liners make 3 different pieces: the outside liner, the medium, the fluting in the side, and then the inside liner. Those are your 3 liners. You run that through a corrugator. That's going to create your sheets. The sheets then go through either an automaton machine, which is a slotter that's going to turn it into a regular slotted carton, or it's going to turn it into a die cut, like a cookie cut. So what we knew is the products were going to be, these boxes were going to be stuffed with foam. It's a very manual operation. And so by taking out the glue joint, you take out a process. Every process in this change costs more money. So by eliminating the process, we saved a ton of money. So this box that cost $1.20 that made me about $1,200 a month in profit went from going from $1,200 in profit to $12,000 by just removing the glue joint, and then went from $12,000 to $24,000 by taking the bottom of the box, and this is a die cut box, and the top, and running them on the same die, so you had an even run rate. So all these little efficiencies that you took something that no one wanted to do, you took a turd and you polished it into a diamond.
And that's why, and that has been one of the keys to your success. You've been able to run towards problems other people are running away from. That channel partnership has been able to do that, which led you to founding Rosemar USA here in the United States. So tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So how I got my start with Rosemar USA. Let's go back to the tornado that came through Nashville. Okay. Right after the tornado came through, I was out in Lebanon, Tennessee, and one of the facilities was a facility, and again, nothing is made in one place. That's the thing that you'll learn in packaging. Everything comes from all these different places. Same thing with fulfillment. Well, for Comcast, right? So think about the pandemic with Comcast. Something breaks and your router breaks, your TV box breaks. No one can come in your house, so they just send you a new one. Problem is this is the beginning of the pandemic. They're saying that COVID-19 lives on all these surfaces, so they need to wipe down all these boxes. The boxes, the routers, the extension cords that go in, the plug that goes into the box, they don't come from the same places. They don't come in the same box. They all have to be kitted and then shipped to you. And so I went in there, and one of the reps said, hey, I sold a truckload of sanitizer here. I made all this money on it. I said, truckload of sanitizer? I was like, I've got an operation in Mexico, a manufacturer that I work with that makes sanitizer. Do you need more? He said, no, I need disinfectant wipes. And so we threw it through our channel. I had someone come to me a couple of years ago and say, why can't Mexico be our China in terms of manufacturing arms? Why do we send everything to China, all the components to come in for us to do, the last 10% of manufacturing? And, at first I said, well, the infrastructure is not there, the investment, kept going through the reasons why not, and eventually said, maybe I need to ask myself why it can't be. And so I started to really mine in Mexico. I manufacture, through channel partnerships, I manufacture tape for major brands, Johnson & Murphy, Journeys, Gap, Nike, a couple other big ones. And what we saw was that they had infrastructure that could support the United States, savings by being closer, cutting down lead times, not the conventional savings of just being lower cost per unit, no trade tariffs, having to order much less, not having to have a Chinese bank account without having to prepay, all those things that add into it. And so, as we ran this opportunity through our network in Mexico, And this isn't just for Rosemar. Channel Partnerships was doing isolation gowns for CVS. I did all the isolation gowns for CVS for their drive-through testing. We reconverted a tape manufacturing facility to make gowns. So we converted things during COVID-19 because the pandemic. And so what that did is it just led me to start onboarding Rosemar. Well, Rosemar is essentially a direct competitor to Ecolab. People look at the products and say, oh, you're a products company. You make disinfectant wipes. In Mexico, that's not our core business. Our core business is based around, going back here into the 80s, food production was trying to enter the United States from Mexico. Didn't meet our sanitary regulations. So there was needed, things were needed to be done so that the processing facilities wouldn't pass along any bacteria or anything like that. And so they started creating formulas. The creation of formulas turned into chemical manufacturing, turned into products manufacturing, turned into the service of cleaning and disinfection. And so this is a 38-year-old company that's been doing this a long time. However, the U.S. market's need were directly focused in products. So they needed disinfectant wipes, we needed sprays, aerosols, adhesives. And what we know about most of the people that are in the specialty chemical industry, it's all been shipped to China. So we secured the supply chain. My background comes from fulfillment, packaging, distribution. We secured the supply chain to then bring a company to market that already had all of the formulas, had everything in its Rolodex, was fully integrated, and was just waiting to do business on the other side.
And that's how you started. You partnered with some Rosemar ownership and opened a Rosemar USA.
Essentially what we did. So the problem with Mexico, and this is the issue, this is why, one of the reasons, Mexico's law doesn't really suit doing business in Mexico, whether you're Mexican or you're, from another country. It's just not very fair. And so if you send money over there and you don't get your product or you're not happy with the product you got, good luck. So what I did is I spent time investing in relationship capital, finding the right manufacturers that had the right footprints, had the right products to offer, and then entering them into the U.S. market. Normally, this takes a long time. With COVID, everything was accelerated. Millions of dollars in business turned into over $100 million in business in a very short period of time. And so, what we knew was that Rosemar had reach and had offerings, but had no vehicles. And so initially, I had exclusive distribution rights through Channel Partnerships. Channel Partnerships then acquired equity in Rosemar's operations in all of the United States. And what we're doing is we're building mirror images of the entities in Mexico to transfer the company over. And eventually we will be one multinational corporation. But right now, as we are essentially C corporations in the United States with common ownership to the Mexican entities. So I am the founder, one of the four founders of Rosemar USA. I am the CEO and director of all operations here in the United States. But I am not just Rosemar. My partners and their family deserve all the credit in the world for building such an awesome company and having the right solutions. Really, COVID-19 is not a problem that can't be solved with solutions that already exist in Rosemar.
Yeah, well, and I think the story of preparation, we talked about plan. We're actually doing your 5 Ps backwards. So we're talking about the plan as the 5th P. We talked about your plan, the resources that you got, your student loan. Preparation, everything prepared you for your opportunity with Rosemar, your packaging, your connections, etc. So the other 3 Ps I want to talk briefly about is passion, right place, right time, and knowing the right people. So passion refers to, and again, to the listeners who are just listening to this, not watching it, we're at an airport in a hangar, and we must be here at the busiest time of the day because we've been here all morning recording, no noise. And poor Eric, we get on his show, and it's like there's a jet right out here and another prop plane. So my apologies to the bad sound for those of you listening in your car or out for a walk. But passion is about not just excitement about things, but I can see it in your eyes, like you're excited about stuff. But the things you're excited about are about fixing problems. It's not about hand sanitizers and wipes and corrugated boxes. It's about you love solving problems. Am I reading that right?
Absolutely. I would say I'm a very passionate person, and really anything that I do self-motivator. I'm, at least not in my opinion, I've never been, the one to be overestimated. I'm usually underestimated. And I like that. I reside in that. I harken back to wrestling and something that I've, figured out myself. I would say there are certain positions that you don't want to be in where you're just uncomfortable and, you're really at a position of detriment. And, a coach said something to me at one point in time was, if you could just hang through there, it's only going to be a minute, and you could just be comfortable for that second and regain yourself, then, you can push through and momentum will eventually be back on your side and you get through it. And it was that thought of being comfortable where others are uncomfortable. If you can live in that, if you can, thrive in an area where everyone else says it can't be done, that to me is really the motivator. I love when someone tells me, oh no, it just can't be done. Well, I love to debate and argue. Well, it can absolutely be done. It can be done this way and this way. And so really I would say my passion started there, and that propelled me, to be a state champion in wrestling, and really kind of set my mentality and my modus operandi for everything else, which is, hey, listen, you gotta get in those areas where everyone else is running from, where everyone else doesn't want to be, and you have to own that. And this is where you're supposed to be the strongest. I'm not even sweating. And so that's where, I would say my passion comes from, kind of that not thinking that it can be done. I like to think of the things that can't be done. And that's why I gravitated towards packaging. And, you say my passion's not about packaging. I have a ton of passion about packaging. And the reason for that is because everything comes in a package. There's always a new solution. The problem is never actually fully solved. Everything has a new solution that can come later with more refinement. And it's the same thing with Rosemar. Rosemar, to go back, and although, yes, I am a founder and a partner in it, but this is someone else's family company that they've started. Here's that same thing that I just talked about, the being a champion for this. I liked the fact that I could be a champion of this, and with, controlling microorganisms. There is no solution to 100% control and eradication of microorganisms. If that solution existed, we as human beings wouldn't exist. And so it is an unsolvable problem. You can just mitigate the problem. Yeah. You can't effectively solve it entirely. And because of that, it'll keep me interested and engaged. And that's what I like. I like the constant problem solving. We started as a product company. We're launching services this year. We have a biotech. We have some very, very cool technology and apparatuses to deliver our technology. And then I'm creating a proprietary fulfillment apparatus for D2C, for big box retailers to be able to compete from a fulfillment and from a logistics perspective against Amazon. And, I don't know what you think that's worth, but the number's in the billions. What we want to do is we want to solve problems. And, for me, the passion is having a problem to solve.
Well, so talk about the right place at the right time and the right people. Those are the last two
things. So right place at the right time. It's happened to me quite a few times. I'd say, I've been in the wrong place at the wrong time too, though. It is when that opportunity presents itself, taking it. And, I actually attribute most of the things I attribute to boxing and wrestling and things that I've done and that I know. But boxing, there are times where your mind knows that you're supposed to throw a punch, but yet the punch doesn't happen. When that punch presents itself, like, the adage of, oh, you landed a lucky punch. Well, you had to throw it and you had to land it for it to be lucky. It wasn't so lucky, it was taking the opportunity when it presented itself. I wouldn't say it's so much as it's just right place, right time, but when an opportunity presents itself, go for it, swing for the fences, and you may hit that home run or the grand slam. And so right place, right time, Rosemar is definitely that. The global pandemic is been terrible on business, on people, on social interaction, on really everything. And, Rosemar presents a host of products and solutions that solve those problems. When there were no disinfectant wipes, we didn't shut down. We built the largest disinfectant wipe manufacturing facility in Mexico. And so, those things are important to be there at the right place in the right time. But at the same time, it had to be to go and fulfill those orders, to say, and to put my money where my mouth was, because no one else was, sending the account of the amount of money that I was to buy product and ship it in disinfectant wipes, to go and to buy raw material at double the market price, to, expedite relationships. You can't just start a facility, a manufacturing facility, out of nowhere. We had to go in, and because we didn't have the time to create the relationship capital, we had to pay for it. And, things have evened themselves out now, but it hasn't been without challenge. Right place, right time, absolutely.
What about right people? Who are some people in your life that help you get to success?
Oh, man, the lists are way too long, and I don't want to forget anyone. My mom has always been a major believer in me. My wife, who, quit her job to, come and work with me and follow me down all the crazy rabbit holes that I like to go down. My brother, for supporting me. He helped me start Channel Partnerships, give me a $10,000 loan. I started Channel Partnerships with $10,000. So if that can't, and revenues in the millions. And so, if that can't inspire you, $10,000 to start a company, and $10,000 is not a small amount of money. But trust me, it costs a lot more to start other things.
Well, let me ask you this as we kind of wrap things up in our conversation. How do you define success? What's your definition of success?
Success to me is, achieving the goals that you set out. And so, do I find myself to be successful? Yes, in the goals that I've achieved, but a failure in the ones that I haven't achieved yet. And, success doesn't negate failure. And so I continuously fail, and I fail probably more than anyone else. And it's just the successes that people talk about. They're not always talking about the failures, but there's a lot of failure. And failure is not such a bad thing. It just has a negative connotation. It sucks. It doesn't feel good. You don't want to fail, but you should be taking something out of your failures. Yeah. I have projects that I put my heart and my soul and my passion, and I knew they were the right solutions, and they did exactly what, people wanted them to do, that still didn't go anywhere. And you could sit there and you could cry and, dig yourself a hole, or you can just put that in your back pocket or your tool belt and know for when that tool is necessary again. If that person had that problem, you can make it a likely assumption that someone else that fits the same, profile that they are, the same, makeup, they might most likely have that same problem too.
Yeah, well, I think I think that you're right there, and I think that success, in fact, is achieving the results that you desire, and that failure is a better teacher than success.
Absolutely.
Like if all you do is win, like the rappers, all I do is win, well, then you're pretty dumb because you've never tried anything. Like what have you learned? You're
it's
not
impossible.
Learning, you're
it's
not
impossible.
learning anything.
And success is not just business. I cannot even, begin, and I like to talk, to explain how, satisfied that I am with being able to find, my wife and raise the family that we have. And, in my extended family, family's everything. And foundation is truly, to me, the family and foundation, and friends can be family too. But the foundation that you need for success. Without that foundation, because, listen, you could build something up one story, you take a fall one story, you're not going to kill yourself, most likely. You get up 30 stories and you fall, you're probably dead. And so, you need that strong base and foundation to be able to build those 30 stories.
So if there are people listening to this right now who are brand new entrepreneurs, just getting started, want to know, what's the advice that people like you, sitting in a very successful place in life, what would you tell those new entrepreneurs? What's your piece of advice you'd give them to start?
What are you waiting for? Start. Don't wait. It's not tomorrow. It's today. Take chances. Life is messy. Going back to boxing again, you get your bell rung. You get hit real hard. It doesn't last forever. You got to if you got to take a knee and you got to collect yourself, take a knee and collect yourself. Don't be proud and stand on your feet to get knocked out to where you can't get back up. Yeah. And so I would say, start immediately. That's the process. I mean, people put businesses on pedestals, and when they really get to it and remove the layers of the onion, they tend to find the same thing, which is it takes drive, and it takes courage and tenacity and persistence.
Well, Eric, I really appreciate you being on here, and I appreciate your patience with all the jet and airplane noises in the background. We've had to cut a few times, but thank you for being here. The story has been phenomenal, as I knew that it would be. And for everybody listening and watching on YouTube, there it is. I mean, every single time we sit down and talk with a successful entrepreneur, these 5 things show up in their story, and they might not be apparent immediately. Like they're not right there at the surface of the story. When you dig in a little bit, they're there. And so you, as an entrepreneur, can also succeed by using the same keys. They unlock success for everybody. The key unlocks the door every single time. Passion, right place, right time, knowing the right people, being prepared, and having the right plan. Those are the things that are going to get you to success. My mission in life is to help people just like you achieve the results that you want out of life. And I do that through coaching and consulting. I've got an online school, Results University, where I teach entrepreneurs how to start, scale, enjoy, and exit businesses. But one of the things that I do as a part of my mission is I give away 1 free hour of coaching every single week to some entrepreneur somewhere in the world who has an issue. So it's the Real Jason Duncan, working with real entrepreneurs on real issues. And if you would like to apply for that free 1 hour of coaching, then you can go to my website, therealjasonduncan.com/free coaching. That's therealjasonduncan.com/free coaching. And just fill out a short form there, first name, last name, email address, and what your issue is. My team takes a look at all the applications every week, and we choose one person that we reach back out to, and you get 1 hour free with me one-on-one. Now, normally I'm very expensive, but I do this one for free as my way to give back and help entrepreneurs create businesses, because I want to see 1,000 entrepreneurs create 1,000 businesses every single year. Is that going to be you? Reach out to me and let me know. I'll see you next week on The Root of All Success when I talk with another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. And as another plane goes by, I'll talk to you next week. And remember, Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we invite you to visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Take charge of your business. Grow it from great to incredible. Join us again next time here on The Root of All Success.